After 5 long years of waiting and a spin-off game to hold us over, Insomniac Games has finally released the follow-up to the first critically and commercially acclaimed Marvel Spider-Man with Marvel's Spider-Man 2. After the painstakingly long wait and years of hype and speculation, it's finally here, and it, for the most part, delivered on what it set out to do. Take everything great from Marvel Spider-Man and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales and crank it up to 11. Now, did it deliver across the board in this regard on all fronts? Well, let's suit up, load up our web shooters, and swing right into it. Marvel Spider-Man 2 is a third-person action-adventure game published by Sony Interactive Entertainment and developed by Insomniac Games, and is the follow-up to Marvel's Spider-Man released back in 2018 and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales released in 2020. It takes place 10 months after Miles Morales, which was set roughly 1 year after the events of the first game, with Miles now having established himself as the second Spider-Man in New York City. Both Peter and Miles are facing challenges as they attempt to lead their double lives as both regular people and their superpowered alter egos. We find Peter starting his new job as a teacher, and Miles is struggling to focus enough to finish writing his college essay. And the sequel kicks off with a bombastic, larger-than-life boss battle against a huge, very disgruntled Sandman, with the power of the PS5 on full display as our heroes get flung across the city and buildings are collapsing around them all in real time.
Look out! You okay?
Yeah, but I think we found him! Marco!
Set Mr. Airstick down, but not before he barked on my suit.
He's not the only one! Sandman just puked out some new friends!
What the? He can do that?
Where do all these guys come from?
So similarly to the first game, after completing the big opening action-packed set piece, the world begins to open up somewhat as you're tasked with helping first responders and stopping criminals trying to take advantage of all the chaos that Marco unleashed when he went on his sand-filled tantrum. Once you've completed that, you return to Aunt May's house where Peter now resides, and you're introduced to Insomniac's version of Harry Osborn.
MJ!
Whoa! Doctors haven't cleared me for MJ hugs yet.
Sorry.
Harry. I missed you.
I missed you too.
In order to build up the friendship between Peter and Harry and provide some backstory, there's a fairly lengthy sequence where you're riding bikes through Queens and returning to the high school that Peter and Harry went to years ago. Some reviewers have taken issue with this style of storytelling that they refer to as walkie-talkie sections, but it didn't bother me as I was interested to see who Harry was in this universe and what the dynamic was like between the two.
Yeah. Where are we going? You'll see. Come on. Try to keep up.
You sure you're up for this?
Oh yeah. I'm feeling good. I was using the cane just for insurance, but I don't even need it.
After that, it becomes the standard open world experience we're all used to at this point, where you can choose to head to the next main objective or veer off and pursue side quests and other activities. Some classic Spider-Man villains are introduced in this game, including Kraven the Hunter, Lizard, Mysterio, and of course, Venom. They're mostly cleverly interweaved into the narrative, and I found their stories compelling. Personally, I was most looking forward to seeing Venom, so once I knew I was getting close, I started beelining the main story to see what happened, and because I wanted to avoid spoilers.
Save my baby, please!
Pass. Spider-Man, Spider-Man. I'll get to that community stuff a little later.
Graphically speaking, this is one of the best looking games out there in most departments. Some have criticized some of the character models for looking a little pasty depending on the lighting, which I can see to a certain extent, but for the most part, it looks fantastic. They've utilized a new system for rendering muscles underneath the Spidey suits, which looks incredibly lifelike. The suits themselves have so much intricate detail as well, which looks awesome, especially in close-up shots.
My powers, they...
You think his energy got entangled with yours?
I don't know, man.
So just for added context, I did play on Fidelity mode, which I know has some of you out there grimacing, but I have an LG C2, so I was able to utilize not only the 120 Hz refresh rate, but variable refresh rate as well, allowing the game to run at 40 plus frames per second, which is the best of both worlds in my opinion. I always tend to opt for the best visual quality possible, and this mode allows you to get a much smoother experience than the standard 30 FPS. The sound design is incredibly dynamic and exhilarating thanks to the update for the PS5 allowing for Dolby Atmos. From web lines shooting out to buildings, to gunfire from enemies whizzing past your head, to car horns blaring as you swing close to the ground, everything added up to increase the level of immersion while swinging and gliding over the streets of New York. Although, going back to the faces, I'm still upset about the completely unnecessary face change for Peter, especially because Insomniac's reasoning was so stupid. They claimed it was to better accommodate Yuri Lowenthal's performance as the new face matched more closely, but do they not know how motion capture works? You can apply the performance data to whatever rig you want. Did anyone struggle to see his performance come through the original face? Because I know I didn't. The other big face change was to the love of his life, Mary Jane, who went from looking like a beautiful girl in her mid-20s to being passable as Peter's mom, or maybe even Aunt May.
It's a man, baby!
Insomniac came out and said that this is the same face model and actress, which I can believe, but they're straight up lying if they're claiming that they didn't make any changes, unless she somehow managed to age 20 years in 9 months.
I'm sorry, Basil. I thought she was a man. Well, you have to admit, she is rather mannish. Well, no offense, but if that is a woman, it does look like she was beaten with an ugly stick.
Now to the most important aspect of any game, in my opinion, the gameplay. So Marvel Spider-Man 2 takes all the elements that made the first two games so great, traversal, combat, stealth, and puzzle solving, and mostly improves upon all of them in meaningful and interesting ways. One of the most fun aspects of these games is the traversal system, and you know traversal is fun when it makes you never want to use the fast travel system. Obviously, Spider-Man is known for web swinging, and there have been a few improvements here that make it feel better than ever. There's a handful of new swinging animations, they've increased the speed at which you swing, there are brand new moves like the loop-de-loop and corner tether, and of course, the elephant in the room, or spider in this case.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Are the introduction of the web wings. The web wings completely changed the game when it comes to traversing Marvel's New York. They are so fast and fun that it almost discourages players from using traditional web swinging. However, in my case, I tried to strike a nice 50-50 balance between the two. These are incredibly handy to get around the city, and especially across the rivers as Marvel Spider-Man 2 introduces two new districts, Queens and Brooklyn, to the map. There are also wind tunnels you can utilize to move incredibly fast, and updrafts produced by the various AC and ventilation systems found on the roofs of buildings you can maneuver into to gain altitude. Unfortunately, there aren't any combat moves or anything else the web wings are used for other than traversal. For instance, in Batman Arkham City, not only was Batman's cape given much more maneuverability and speed, but it also allowed you to perform various takedowns on enemies. You could dive bomb an enemy and drag them across the ground, or if you acquired the necessary upgrade, you could build up enough momentum to perform an instant takedown on that enemy. However, the web wings were so much fun to use that it didn't bother me too much. Perhaps that's something that they can expand upon in the inevitable sequel based on how well this game sold and was received. Combat has been improved by the introduction of new abilities for both Peter and Miles. Peter starts off with the spider arms and eventually obtains the black suit, and Miles has bioelectric venom powers which continue to evolve over the course of the story. A plethora of upgrades have been added to increase the complexity of combat as you progress as well, which I'll get back to in a minute. Gadgets make a return as well, albeit in a reduced capacity. Along with your web shooters, you have 4 gadgets which produce effects such as suspending your enemies mid-air to follow up with an air combo, to shooting out multiple web lines that attach to them and send them hurtling towards each other at high speed. These are a lot of fun to use and at times very necessary when you're dealing with the increased number of enemies you're fighting at a time. Like I was saying earlier, the upgrade system is back, and there are 3 separate skill trees now that include Peter's, Miles, and a shared third tree that both of them take advantage of. These include anything from faster web swinging and gliding, to new suit abilities like Peter's Symbiote Slam, where he can pick up multiple enemies and send them crashing into the ground.
Still got the moves.
Stealth is the other key ingredient in this gameplay sandwich, and this is where it seems some people think it's improved while others think it's worse. Let me explain. So in the first game, you were limited by what vantage points were in the environment for Spider-Man to web zip to. This added a layer of challenge as you could only move to those points and wait for enemies to separate, or attempt to create a distraction to separate them yourself. You also had gadgets such as the web trip mine, which allowed you to set up traps for unsuspecting enemies to be lured into. In the sequel, they've added the new ability to shoot out web lines to create new vantage points during stealth encounters. I found this to be an awesome addition, as it was reminiscent of the line launcher perch move that was introduced in Batman Arkham City. I loved being able to create my own vantage points to surveil the environment and isolate which enemy I was going to take down next. They also added in a dual stealth takedown, again similar to Arkham City, which was a ton of fun once I unlocked it. However, it is a fairly late game unlock, unfortunately, as it's near the bottom of the shared skill tree. However, in the sequel, the web trip mine is no longer available, thereby limiting the options you have during the stealth encounters, which isn't something I noticed while I was playing, but upon reflection I do realize how I mainly just stuck with the traditional stealth takedowns from the various vantage points, so take that as you will. For me personally, though, I still really enjoyed going in stealthy and making the most of the element of surprise on unsuspecting thugs. Thankfully, they are a little more intelligent this time around, and will look up if they find one of their buddies have been taken out. At the very least, they aren't deaf like Patrick when he's sleeping. As with any open-world game, there are plenty of side missions to keep you busy and pad out the runtime if you want to take your time with the main story and see everything the game has to offer. Similar to the previous 2 games, there are a number of handcrafted side missions for both Peter and Miles, along with a variety of random crimes that players will be familiar with who played the other games. One side mission has Spider-Man team up with a familiar face in order to track down the leader of a mysterious cult that has surfaced in the city, while another has Miles tracking down stolen instruments from a cultural museum. The random crimes can be anything from a store robbery to a drug deal going down, or a speeding car that is endangering everyone as it careens down the city streets. This is where I can recognize and somewhat agree with other reviewers who have explained how these side missions haven't seen too much evolution or innovation and feel very similar.
Looks very, similar.
I guess their idea was to streamline it so it wouldn't take up as much of the player's time, but I found that it just took away control and agency from the player and made it feel like the game was playing itself at times. But more on that later. Puzzles are back, and at the very least provide a little variety to keep the gameplay loop feeling fresh and prevents it from getting too repetitive. One of the new puzzles involves taking out corrupted parts of the genetic structures of different plants to help you determine what element or material you're looking for, or help you in tracking a missing person by determining what type of substance or material they had on their person at the time. I found these enjoyable enough, although I can't definitively say they were better than the voltage puzzles from the first game. Other puzzles involve you mixing and matching different substances to create new plant hybrids that can be used to increase food production throughout the city. Some may find the puzzles tedious and a distraction, but I never minded them and always enjoy more variety in my games, so these were a welcome addition in my book.
One step closer to feeding the world.
Nice work.
Boss battles have also seen a significant upgrade over their predecessors from the previous two games by adding multiple phases to most of them, and the enemies now have health bars visible at the top of the screen to accommodate their much larger health pools. These were fast-paced, visceral, and a ton of fun. From the opening with Sandman, the lizard fight that was shown off in the trailers, to a few others I don't want to give too many details on. All in all, I really enjoyed them and found them to be much better this time around. These fights also include plenty of breathtaking spectacle, like in the opening when you're fighting Sandman with his giant fist coming down and destroying buildings, to the bombastic chase with the lizard as cars are flying at you and you're swinging through smashed buildings trying to catch up to him. However, as I stated earlier, the game will sometimes just continue on with cutscenes rather than have any kind of player interaction. There may be a prompt to press circle to dodge something here or there, but it seems like there's less of an emphasis on QTE sequences during the cutscenes in this game. If you recall back in the first Spider-Man game, you were stopping a helicopter tail from rolling down the street and smashing citizens, and then rapidly pressing the left and right triggers to web up the chopper before it hit the ground. I really appreciated these moments in the first game, as they helped keep the cutscenes interesting and the player engaged as they watched. So I'm sad to see that although they are still here somewhat, it's in a reduced capacity.
Seriously?
Now, if you thought that just because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan and I absolutely loved the first game and really enjoyed Miles Morales that I wasn't going to critique this game, well then you've got another thing coming.
This is the guy that gave the key to the city to?
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
Because unlike all the paid-off shills out there who get early review codes and will automatically give the game a 9 or 10 out of 10, and believe that Insomniac games can do no wrong, I want to be upfront and honest with all of you. Simply because I believe that as a reviewer, it's my job to share every aspect of a game with the public so they know just what they're spending so much of their hard-earned money on. So with all that said, here we go. Firstly, as many reviewers have mentioned, it's impossible to ignore that the entire gameplay formula feels very familiar, and with any sequel, if there's a lack of substantial innovation, it's going to feel very similar to what came before. Unfortunately, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is not an exception to this. That's not to say that this is a bad thing. If a sequel does enough to justify its existence and make the previous game feel obsolete by comparison, then in my opinion, it's done its job as a sequel. However, there is something to be said about game sequels that make massive jumps from one game to the next. You probably already know what I'm going to say, but in my opinion, the Batman Arkham trilogy are some of the most innovative games I've ever come across, with a narrative that's tied together between all the games, but each one feeling like a different, unique experience with how much is introduced in each one. The best way I could describe Marvel Spider-Man 2 is an iterative sequel more than an innovative one, if that makes sense. A plethora of tweaks have been made here and there to improve the overall experience, while it still very much feels like a more refined version of the previous two games. I imagine some of this can be pinned to Miles Morales introducing some improvements in between the two mainline games. I guess after so much development time, I was just expecting a little bit more.
I want more.
Next is the black suit. While I didn't have a problem with the design, it's more so the implementation. With Peter being affected by the suit, I expected his combat and traversal animations to be affected as well. I imagine they'd be more aggressive, the tendrils would be heavily involved, and he would move completely differently than when he was in the classic red and blue suit, similarly to how it was implemented in Spider-Man Web of Shadows back in 2008. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, as the unique animation seemed to be limited to several combat finishers, as well as the symbiote abilities you acquire, such as the symbiote punch and tendril slam. And also the symbiote surge mode, where he goes into a rage mode and starts one or two shotting all enemies in his path. Not a major issue, but more of a nitpick. The third issue is with the story. Now, it by no means was a bad story, and I want to be careful to avoid spoilers here, but basically, for the latter half of the game, Peter is continuously apologizing to people and being outshined by everyone else around him. There's even a line where he says to Miles, "Maybe MJ was right. Why would the city need me when it has you?"
What?
Maybe MJ was right. Why would the city need me when it has you?
You serious?
Yes, why would the city need the original Spider-Man that's been diligently defending and protecting them for nearly a decade? The Spider-Man that's only 25 years old, who apparently is getting old and is a washed-up superhero. So basically, by the end, Miles explains that he can handle the entire city, and Peter should just go be Peter Parker for a while. Plus, a writer for Insomniac explained in an interview that apparently Miles Morales is going to be the main Spider-Man going forward, which is one of the most baffling, moronic decisions I've ever heard. I don't have a problem with Miles as a character, but it does bother me when he takes the spotlight away from the Spider-Man, the guy I wanted to play as most because it's his name on the cover, and Miles just took it along with his suit and his gadgets. I can only imagine if they did this with Batman, where at the end of Arkham City, Robin tells Bruce that he can handle Gotham, and Arkham Knight would have just been Tim Drake in a Batman costume going around pretending to be Batman. It just completely deflated my hype for Insomniac's universe, and honestly, I'm not that excited for the next one if this is the direction they're taking. Oh boy, well this section is going to be interesting because we're once again going to be talking about the morality of this game. So, Marvel Spider-Man 2 is rated T for teen, and as such has a number of profanities used, drug references, and violence. However, the major thing I noticed in the sequel is how they increase the number of references to liberal ideology, identity politics, and general wokeness. The biggest red flag that made me nearly cringe out of my body was a side mission where Miles has to help a gay guy ask his boyfriend out to homecoming.
Has to be perfect. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, I got you. Can you explain a little slower? What happened?
Okay. I want to ask someone to homecoming, but he's special.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
Aw, that's the movie we saw when we had our first kiss. Look, braces, lip balm, and all.
It's known you're a special guy, and I'm lucky you're my special guy. I love you, Lucas.
This is the worst. This is the worst!
Needless to say, I despise this mission. And look, I know he's supposed to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and help people out with their smaller problems, but I couldn't help but think what other crimes were going on while I was slowly helping this guy. Like, were there bank robberies and carjackings going on whenever I was just standing there? When it was finally over, I couldn't help but think that I'd literally rather be doing anything else. I'd have preferred a side mission where you have to get Spider-Man to the bathroom within a set time limit because he was suffering from sudden onset explosive diarrhea. It's also kind of funny considering I made a prediction years ago after Insomniac put in gay pride flags and BLM murals that they'd eventually have a trans person give you a side mission. And I don't think I was too far off the mark with that one. The other noticeable grievance was the feminist rant MJ goes on about she has to sacrifice so much so Peter can live a normal, happy life. She has to work at a job where she's not appreciated and help pay his bills. I'm sorry, but did she not realize who she was agreeing to date in the first place? A guy who literally puts his life on the line each and every day to protect the innocent and puts his life on hold in doing so. Peter has it way rougher than MJ, but of course he starts apologizing to her and tells her how stunning and brave she is and how he doesn't deserve her. But if you ask me, it's the other way around. I've heard that a company known as Sweet Baby Incorporated was consulted in regards to ensuring the script included enough diversity, equity, and inclusion for this title. Not to be confused with Matt Walsh's Sweet Baby Gang.
It's a sweet baby gang.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest, considering the uptick in political messaging and LGBTQIA plus minus divided by sign ampersand question mark ideology that was in this game. I know that after I've worked a full day and get home to relax and de-stress, I go play a Spider-Man game to get preached to about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I thought I was enjoying some escapism from the real world, but unfortunately with left-wing writers and designers in all departments of entertainment, it attempts to follow you wherever you go, not unlike a black, festering symbiote that feeds off its host and relies on them to keep it alive. Now, why does that sound so familiar? To wrap everything up in a nice little web,
Oh, brother!
I'd say that while some of the issues I had dragged this game down for me a little bit compared to the spectacular original, I overall still had an absolute blast with this one. From the combat to the traversal to the interesting villains and story beats for the most part, this is a game that I'd easily recommend to any Spider-Man fan, and even if you aren't a fan and are just looking for a solid action-adventure game. It's for all these reasons that the final verdict for Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is going to be an 8 out of 10. A solid game with a few gripes from some of the story beats to the inclusion of woke ideology and politics that drag it down for me from being truly amazing or even a masterpiece. In hindsight, I'd probably give the first game a 9 out of 10 by comparison. In certain respects, I'm still very much looking forward to the next installment to see what Insomniac can do when they have some more time to further innovate and expand upon the gameplay mechanics and systems introduced here. However, I can't say the same for the story, as they seem to be telling a passing of the torch story prematurely, as I believe that kind of thing is usually saved for the end of a trilogy, akin to Bruce Wayne passing on the mantle of Batman to Robin John Blake at the end of The Dark Knight Rises. At the end of the day, though, this is Insomniac's version of the character and world, and we'll just have to wait and see what they do next. Although I can't say I'm exactly waiting with bated breath anymore, and more so with cautious optimism. We'll have to wait and see, since the next project on their slate is Marvel's Wolverine. One can only hope that Sweet Baby Incorporated and all the liberal writers don't get their grubby little hands on that script. Otherwise, we may be seeing a similar situation there, but I sincerely hope that's not the case. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please feel free to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Sorry this one took me so long to make, but just a lot going on with the holidays. But again, thank you so much. God bless you. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm wishing you God's best for now and throughout all eternity.
All gonna go down. You leave Connors alone! He doesn't deserve this!
Cut them loose!
But if you or Craven keep going after him, you'll answer to me! Get me out of this!